So, hello everyone, welcome to this video. So, in this video, we will be discussing about cascading style sheets. Okay. So, as part of this video, we'll be discussing about CSS selectors. Okay, cascading style sheet selectors. So, inserting this CSS into HTML, so how we can insert them, and we will also discussing about CSS box model, and we will also see the relevant demos, just like our last HTML video is concerned. So CSS, what is cascading style sheet actually? Okay, so CSS actually describes how HTML elements are actually displayed within this sort of browser. Okay, HTML was originally created to describe the content. It was never intended for formatting the web pages. Okay, so basically you should be able to put content into this sort of HTML documents, and the document rendering is the job of the browser. Okay, it was never intended to format all the things into this sort of HTML documents. However, HTML 3.2 around late 1990s, this specification actually had added support for this sort of fonts, font elements, and color attributes. This made people really abuse these features a lot, and then made web pages very difficult to manage. Say for example, if you want to change any color or something or font of something, you have to literally go through all the web pages and change every place, change the color, change the font, and etc. So it was very difficult to manage the things. To solve this problem, actually CSS has come into picture, and it was created by this World Wide Web Consortium. Let's look at a simple cascading style sheet example. So this cascading style sheets, okay, so this is actually declared within your head element, okay, in the head part of your document. So you will be putting it within this sort of style tags. So style starting tag, style end tag, and so it will basically have different types of selectors. So basically H1 is the selector here that actually says whatever these sort of declarations are created here. So these two declarations, okay, are actually applicable to H1, so header 1 tag. Okay, so that means whatever the declares which are put here will be applied as style to that H1 selector. Okay, so each of these declaration will have a property and a value. So for example here for H1 we had two declarations. So color, it is separated with a colon here. Okay, properties and values in CSS are separated with colons, and each of these declarations you have to separate by this semicolon. So color colon red semicolon. So this actually states color should be red, and the text align is center. Okay, H1. Okay, for the H1. Similarly for this body, we want to put the background color to be light blue. Okay, for the complete body of the HTML document. Okay. So then this is P is for paragraph. If it is a paragraph, we want to change the font, okay, font family as Verdana, okay, and the font size as 18 pixels, which is slightly bigger than the regular text size, and you will put this sort of style information. Let's try to see, okay, so how you put the style and then so on. Okay, let's see the demo. So again, okay, so this is how you will actually put our style sheet, okay. So the style sheet information, all I am putting is within this sort of head. Okay, so you see the highlighted text. This is what I am putting. So I already discussed this in the slide. Okay, so the body is the selector, H1 is the selector, P is the selector, and here are these sort of properties and values. Okay, so now let us try to see. Okay, so originally our web page was like this, really boring, isn't it? Just plain text. Now, just by putting this sort of style, okay, then a new thing can be rendered something like this one. See, what I am trying to say is in my H1, okay, H1 should be red and then centered. Okay, it used to be in the plain, it was like this. Okay, immediately after putting this one, it became centered and red. Okay, so all my H1s have became like that one. Similarly, all my paragraphs, so now they became Verdana and 18 pixels. So all my paragraphs became Verdana font, and then became this sort of bigger text. You see, all the text within the piece became like that, and all my body background color light blue has come. For making this sort of style appear, okay, and for making all these sort of changes into my web page, I have not literally changed anything into my HTML document. Had I changed anything into my HTML document? I have not. So all I have added is that style information. That's the advantage of CSS. Okay, let's move further. There are different types of CSS selectors possible. Okay, so there are simple selectors, and of course, like we'll try to see them in the next slides. So the simple CSS element selector. So this is a single element type. We already have seen, like say for example, if it is for P is the selector. Okay, we are actually putting this sort of property and values. Okay, so basically like these declarations are there. Okay, font family Verdana, font size 16 pixels. Okay, and then like you can also group them. So for example, group multiple elements. Say for example, I can specify like if for H1 and H2 the text should be centered. Okay, then I can put in a single thing, grouping selector is called. Okay, so H1 commas H2, and then like I have the declarations for that CSS text align center. We'll see them in examples. Multiple element types. However, if you want to select all these sort of tags within, so universal selector there is there. If you put star and the font weight as bold, everything becomes bold. Okay, so there will be certain requirements in some pages. However, like if you want to apply a certain style only to a particular element, okay, this is where the ID actually comes into picture. Say for example, like you can have the selector as post title. The post title, if you want to put it as red text, you can specify a selector for that one, and you can put an ID, okay, ID for that H1 header 1, heading text 1. So basically, like you set that ID as course title, okay, and within this sort of CSS, you will have that sort of hash, that course title, okay, which is the ID name there. Then whatever this H1 is rendered by following this style. Okay, so this is specific element by ID. We'll see all the things in examples. Okay, there are also other simple selectors. Okay, so CSS class selector. This is very interesting actually. Say for example, like here in this P, okay, this paragraph, I can define as classes. So it basically, say for example, class selector starts with a period. Okay, say for example, now for this paragraph element, I can define a class something like a center. So now in the style sheet, okay, within the style part, I can select like P dot center. If a paragraph, okay, is of the class center, P dot center, okay, so in this place P has that class, then align the text as center. Of course, you could have specified any other property. So this is a basic property which I am giving so that like we can very easily see it. You could have changed the color, you could have increased its font, you could have increased its boldness and blah blah blah, what not. You can do all sorts of things. If that is in the P class, whereas like this is a generic class. So wherever like any element which is within this sort of class large, we are trying to increase its font size to 20 pixels. Okay. Say for example, there can be another tag. Say for example, a div tag, which is actually for the divisions, maintaining that one. And if you put it like class large, every text, all the text within the div tag will be large, okay, as well. So that means like here in the example, like the P also has the large and the div tag also has the large. So the dot large specifies like any element which has this class as large will have this sort of increased size. So an element can also refer to more than one class. Okay, this is the example which I have given here. Okay, there are also other selectors. Okay, so the combinator selectors are something like this. You can have a descendant selector. Descendant selector, again the same div and the P. So you have this sort of division tag starting and division tag ending. Within that one, like you have a P paragraph. Okay, there are several paragraphs. Paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. What this selector is saying is, if there is a div tag and P is there within that one, okay, within that tag, then for all these paragraphs, put the color as blue. This is the CSS statement actually stating that one. So you have the div tag, within the div tag, okay. So if there are paragraphs within the div, you have the paragraphs, okay. So all the paragraphs should have text B. You can also specify if the div as slash, okay, I mean like greater than b, okay. So this actually shows like it is a chain selector. So in this case, like if there is a div tag and if there is a paragraph and within a paragraph there is another paragraph, okay, the text in the outer paragraph is the only one which will be blue. So the inner paragraph will not be blue because it is not a direct change. Okay, so if you specify it like this one. Of course, there are several other ways of combining things, what sort of changes, siblings, okay, so all sorts of things. If you want to know more information, you can check out this link. This is also one type of selectors. There are also other type of selectors called the pseudo classes. Okay, so these things actually define about a special state of an element. Say for example, you have that URL links. Okay, so anchor tags. Okay, so whenever we are clicking, so we are going to a different page. So for that one, like we can define a pseudo class. Okay, so basically for that anchor tag. Okay, so if it is an unvisited link, so if we specify this link class, okay, so pseudo class, okay, pseudo class. Remember this one. The regular classes you will put with a dot, okay, with a period, whereas the pseudo class you will have a colon link. So this is if it is an unvisited link, so the color should be red. If it is a visited link, the color should be green, RGB. So this is green FF. Okay. So if the mouse is basically coming over it, okay, over that one, power color. So red RGB, R red plus blue. Okay, with 255, it will be I think green color. Okay. So basically like you can have different colors set for that one. A column active, which is like the selected link. If you have already selected it, then you will see like the blue color, RGB, blue color. Okay, whatever the link which you have selected. Okay, so you can specify these sort of pseudo classes for that. Okay, let's see it. So this is our next CSS. Okay, so this is how it is actually rendered. Okay, so I have increased my style. Okay, so basically you see like I have this sort of background, okay, still the blue. So here I have added this multiple selectors h1 and h2. So what I have said is like if h earlier like it was only h1, then it should be centered. So now I have put like h1 and h2 are to be centered. So if I refresh this one, okay, so now I see like this is my heading 1 which is centered. Okay, at the same time, like my heading 2s, see objectives of the course and detailed syllabus, these are my heading 2s. Okay, these things are also now coming to the center. Of course, these are heading 3s. Heading 3s are not still rendered as the basic ones. Okay, they are not coming to the center. So now, if you also see, like say for example, like we also have discussed about this sort of classes. Okay, so for this paragraph, okay, so which is like unit 2, okay, whichever we are discussing, okay, see h3 is rendered still like this. For this b, for the paragraph within this unit 2, I have put it as like center and large. Okay, since this is the thing like which we are learning as part of this b, I want to highlight. Say for example, we have come to this level. So what I have mentioned, I have defined two classes for that, a center and a large. Now in the style sheet, what I have mentioned is, okay, if it is in paragraph and in a paragraph is in center, okay, basically like I want it to be aligned in center. So that's how like it is basically aligned in the center. Okay, so this paragraph text is coming to the center. And I specified like if large class is specified in any tag, not just this paragraph, but any tag, the font I want to increase to something like 20 pixels. Okay, so this is increased size to 20 pixels. Everything else is 16. All the paragraphs are 16 pixels, whereas this text is 20 pixels. Okay, see all the things I am just specifying within the style sheet itself. Okay, and then like say for example, I also have declared like if there is a div and p, so if there is a div tag and if there is a paragraph within the div tag, the color should be blue. Okay, so basically like I have for all these sort of course objectives, I have kept a div tag. So basically this is the starting tag and the end tag here. So the paragraph information whichever is shown here is, you see, now it is in blue color. Of course, then I also have had this sort of pseudo classes. Okay, so basically for this sort of anchors. So now basically all my anchors become like, say for example, green. So I already clicked it earlier. Okay, so basically they became green, or else by default they should be blue. When I hover over them, they are changing to pink color. Okay, not just that one, the highlighted, even this link, okay, this also gets highlighted, because like earlier, if you remember, like we had created this sort of anchor for the syllabus, you see. So when the text is becoming bigger, like you still it is trying to come to this sort of detailed syllabus part. So that's about some of the CSS for these sort of links. So it's very interesting. So basically you have to put all the things in the style. You don't change it much in your HTML documents, other than putting like few references and IDs and basically like that. Okay. There are three different ways how you can actually insert this sort of CSS into your HTML documents. So internal CSS, we already have seen. The styles are defined within this sort of style element, and these style elements are actually put in the head section. The last two examples which we have discussed, and then like the demos which we have seen, were actually putting all the things into this sort of head information. However, if you want to specify the CSS only for a single tag, okay, single element, okay, you can do that. So it has a style attribute. Say for example, for a header 1, okay, you can just specify the style to be color red, text align center within that one, within the tag itself. Okay, you can add it. But if you add it like this one, you again end up with the same old problem. Like people were putting font and text everywhere within the text, and if you want to change it later, like it would be a huge trouble. Okay, so don't use this one. Okay, internal CSS is also okay, but then there is also another approach called external CSS. Okay, so internal CSS, there is a problem. If your web page has a lot of documents, the style content whatever you are putting, you have to place the starting style till ending style. You have to put this style information into every head of every web page which you have created. That's again a bit problematic thing, isn't it? However, what you would like to do is, like, you want to put all this style into one CSS document, cascading style sheet document, CSS.css file, and then like somehow want to link that document in every web page. So that's how like you will actually maintain this sort of external CSS. You define a link element, okay, again still it will be in the head, and you will basically put like a rel style sheet, and you will put a href, okay, where this sort of cascading style sheet document is there. Okay, if it is within the same folder, the relative addressing will work. If it is somewhere in a different place, like you put a complete URL for that one, okay, on a different server or something, okay, you can put a complete URL here. The interesting thing is, a document can have both internal and external CSS as well. That's the interesting thing. You can have an external CSS file, you can have some style text within the head, and you can also have, say for example, some element based style attributes as well. Okay, but then like there is a catch. If there are several definitions for an element, how will they are resolved? If some properties are defined for the same selector, okay, that is the element, in different style sheets, the value from the last red style sheet will be used. Okay, this is something which we have to remember. In CSS, there is another very interesting model called CSS box model. Any element which you put, say for example a text, a text box, okay, something like even a radio button, okay, even whatever, any menu, any item you put in this in the HTML, as far as CSS is concerned, like it will have certain things. So the element will be here. It will have a height and width. The element will be surrounded by a padding. Okay, so there will be some padding space around it. Okay, so padding left, padding top, padding right, and padding bottom. On top of this padding, there will be this border. So if you are specifying a border for any element, okay, so you not even the border is not coming immediately after the element. The element is here in this red mark, and there will be some padding outside this sort of element, and the border is coming outside that one. Outside the border, again the border will have this sort of left, right, and bottom and up. Okay, there is still the margin. Okay, outside this border of that particular element, you still have this sort of margin, margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and then margin left. Okay, so all these things, like you parameters, you can actually set for it. So now earlier we had this sort of div tag, which was basically specifying for our for our in our example, like we had it for our course objectives. So in this div tag. Okay. So div tag has the complete space. Within that one, our course objectives are there. You can now specify, like, say for example, its border style to be dotted, border color to be black. Okay, so we will have a border color for that one. And then, like, we want to have a margin top as 30 pixels. So that means, like, we want to have 30 pixel gap from whatever we have above, and margin bottom, like, also, like, we want to have 30 pixels, and we want to have 150 pixels to the right side. Okay, so 150 pixels. So any element appears after that one, we want to have 150 pixels as a break. Okay, and left as well 80 pixels. And again, like, we want to put this sort of padding top, padding right, etc. So we can specify all these parameters. If you want to know more about this sort of box model, CSS box model, you can check it Wikipedia, and also, like, again, those W3C schools tutorial has a detailed description about all these things. Let's try to see a demo of this one. So this is a CSS. Okay, so my point is, like, basically what I'm trying to do is, like, these course objectives are appearing just like that one. I want to beautify them, I want to put them in a div. Okay, and then, like, I want to place them nicely. Okay, so this is how, like, I want to place them. So basically what I have done is, okay, so I have created a CSS file. Okay, now I have an external CSS file for that one. Okay, link rel href course style.css. Okay, so that means, like, I have another CSS file for that one. Okay, and I have not changed anything in the HTML document. You see, like, it is exactly the same. Div tag is there, paragraph is there. Okay, all my unordered list is there. Okay, blah blah blah. And all I am doing is going to the CSS file. Okay, in this CSS file, I had this sort of div selector, and I selected that dotted. Okay, so the border style dotted. Okay, so that's how, like, I got the dotted black. Okay, so color is black, and margin top is 30 pixels, and then so on and so blah blah blah. Okay, margin. So basically, like, this is how I see it. Okay, so if I render it, if I want to change anything, say for example, like, margin left also, like, I want to increase. So this left margin is relatively lesser than the right one. So I want to have much bigger margin here. I can specify, like, say for example, I want to have the same 150 pixels there. Remember this, I am changing only in the CSS file. I have not changed anything into the HTML document. Still it is arranged, isn't it? So that's the beauty of it. So now, as I said about this sort of box model, we have the element which is the div tag here. Okay, and we had this padding. You see, the padding is the one. If I don't have the padding, say for example, if I remove the padding left instead of 30 pixels. Okay, so if I say, like, only 0 pixels there. Okay, what is happening? The text is falling onto that one. This is not nice. Okay, so the div is actually almost coming close to this sort of border. So I want to have this sort of 30 pixel difference there. Okay, which will actually put it like this one. So the idea is, like, with this sort of CSS, okay, you can control the way, like, how the style of a document is maintained. Okay, so without even changing, without making much changes to the document itself. Okay, here is this div. Say for example, if you had another div here, you wanted to put it onto the right, you can actually adjust all these parameters. You can actually set it like that one. Okay, so now, say for example, even if the page becomes bigger and smaller, still I have my left and right spaces maintained. Okay, for this one. So even this sort of upper, we have this sort of margin also maintained. So the 30 margin, and so on and so on. Okay, that's about the CSS. Okay, and let's move further. So great. Now the point is, like, earlier I kept, say for example, by default I have shown, like, how I can change the font of a table. Okay, with CSS I can even change that one again. Okay, say for example, I can have this sort of selector table. If the table is the one border collapse. Okay, so the collapse. So generally the table will have two borders, one for the table border, another one for all this sort of table data border. If I collapse it, so then they all fall into a single border. Okay, earlier if you remember, like, we had this sort of double border for that. Okay, and then, like, I have the selector for table, th and td. So table headers and table data. So all these things, like, I am selecting. Okay, in this CSS, and I am specifying, like, the border is 1 pixel for all of the elements, and it would be a solid black line. Okay, so this is how, like, you can actually specify these sort of font styles for these table data. So again, for the references for this sort of video, say for example, you can check the W3C schools tutorial. Okay, so it has excellent. It has references to a lot of the things, a lot of tags. Okay, so we have discussed a lot of tags, but there are a lot more tags. Okay, a lot more information there. If anybody is interested in seeing short videos again, okay, and then like immediately seeing like what will happen with each and every rendering, so these videos are good. Okay, so I recommend them. But the catch is something like this one. So within this week, like we have to learn a lot of concepts. Okay, HTML, CSS, okay, JavaScript, JSP, XML, etc. This is in the curriculum. Okay, within 2 weeks, like we have to learn about all the technologies. So in the videos, like we are discussing most important ones, and then like to the extent possible, and we are also giving you the references. What else you can actually learn? Okay. Once again, these videos are not exhaustive videos. Thank you very much.